Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. Today I'm going to be working on my Portulacaria afra forest. Not out here in the snow, I'm heading into the greenhouse. It is a beautiful sunny day here this afternoon. I'm going to trim my Portulacaria afra forest back. I've been letting it grow all summer and it's well overdue for a pruning. I did an experiment on this forest. I scarred up the trunk with my scissors to look like elephant tusks have dug into the trunk of these trees, and the effect is quite good. When they've healed over, it's very nice texture on the trunks. I think it looks quite convincing and adds a bit of interest to the trunks of these trees. So you can see how long the new shoots are. It's grown well over the summer, so time to prune it back. I've got my forest on the spinning tree bonsai turntable, so I can rotate it all the way around. So interesting, when I scarred up the trunk here, it stimulated a new shoot to come off the old wood. And I've heard that many times with these Portulacaria afras, that if you scratch the bark, you interrupt that sap flow, you can quite often get a new shoot or new branch that emerges just below that area. So it's a good technique if you have no branches in a particular area and you want one, just nick the trunk and hopefully you'll get a new shoot. There's a new shoot on this old trunk here coming out here. You can see there's one at the base of this tree, a new shoot that's coming out of that scar tissue. Yeah, so it's interesting. So I'm going to begin the pruning now. One thing with this main tree here is that there's not a lot of growth coming out the front. It's kind of a bit flat on the front. And that's generally because you don't want, branches sticking straight out towards the viewer, eye poker branches. You want them coming out to the sides and then kind of starting to fill in the front. So it's always tricky getting that volume at the front of your tree, but without branches that come straight out and poke you in the eye. So I'm going to begin the pruning now. Generally, on a new shoot like this, you can see it comes from the trunk. I have a set of leaves here, another set of leaves 90 degrees to that, 90 degrees to that. I have another set of leaves, so they alternate. So if I want branches to come out horizontally off of this shoot, I would prune it back to here. If I want a branch to grow downwards or upwards, I would prune it just in front of those leaves. So this is called directional pruning, and it's very effective on this species. On this lowest branch here, I think I'll prune it back to this first pair of leaves. I want my new branches to kind of go left and right, not up and down. So here I go. I'll prune that off right here. And I always leave a little bit of stub for dieback. Now I have a branch coming out from somewhere off of this trunk here. So I'm going to check where the origin of this branch is. So here's that branch here, and I'm going to remove a leaf here so I can see where it's coming out from. I'm going to remove a leaf here so I can see in here. Okay, so it's coming off of this trunk here, the one on the left-hand side. It's kind of a horizontal branch that comes out and sweeps straight towards the viewer. I don't need that branch in there. It's coming straight towards the viewer, and it kind of comes off of this trunk at a funny angle. It just doesn't flow with anything, so off it comes totally. Like that. I have a new branch growing in between my two trunk lines here. I don't need that either. So that's coming off. The one off to this side is fine. I like that one, and there's another little one at the back. Those can stay, they're fine. They'll help bulk up the main trunk. Now you can see where I've scarred the trunk with the scissors, left a groove down there. It's recovered now, it's healed. So now I can then scar in between my first scars to create even more scarring on the trunk and more visual interest. These trees are styled like the African Baobab tree. That's the style I'm trying to imitate. So any scarring on the trunk will just make them look more like baobabs. I'm going to do the scarring at the end of the video, but I'll just show you an example of what I would do. So up front here, I've got a scar here and here, so in between I come down. And it doesn't matter if you rip the bark off like that. It's like that. You have to go fairly deep to create a good scar. It doesn't really matter how deep you go. You can go quite deep and it'll heal over. These trees don't have bark like a typical tree. They form a skin over this wound, and that's how they heal. They don't have a layer of bark. So you can see this is just flesh with a skin around it, and this will heal with a skin. And it should look pretty good in the future. There's maybe a few more areas I could scar down lower here, like right here. Again, you know, you don't have to worry about keeping your bark on because it's the scar tissue we're after and the roughness. So there, maybe on the roots here I can do a little carving or scoring. Just like that. Yeah, so there, that's kind of scarred up a little more. You can see I could do some scarring on this trunk here too. So I'm looking up in the canopy here now. I have these branches going vertical and there's not very much branching in this area. So I could prune them, you know, quite hard, hoping to get more branching in this area is a possibility. Or, you know, I could prune them up top and see if anything comes out of these trunks. I think it's definitely getting high, these branches. You know, I want my canopy kind of here, not way up here. Keeping these trees small is, you know, part of my goal is to create the illusion of a giant tree, but very small. So I'm going to start up top. I'll do like pruning to the first set of leaves here, pruning them off, getting them shorter, and then once I've done that, I'll come in and select my branches more carefully. So I'm just doing a general kind of top prune. Sometimes with trees, half the battle is just seeing the tree, what's going on with it, and then you can make your pruning decisions. When it's a big bushy mass like this, sometimes it's really hard to see what's going on. So if you just kind of cut away slowly, every time you remove a branch, shorten a branch, you get a better look at the structure. It's better to reduce a tree slowly back than, you know, prune way back in here and maybe make a not so good a decision. Usually it doesn't matter what you do with your tree, they'll recover somehow. You know, if you don't like it after pruning, just wait, things start growing in again and you can get it to your liking. It just takes a bit of time sometimes. So you can see the front part is kind of pruned shorter. Now I'm coming back and doing some of the branches coming off the back here. Again, just reducing them back to some leaves. Before I prune these trees, I always study pictures of baobabs to kind of get a feel for what the tree looks like, and that's the style I'm trying to copy. They call them the upside down tree because they look like you pulled a tree out of the ground, stuck it in upside down, and the top of the canopy kind of looks like the roots, especially when the leaves are bare. So you can see I'm slowly reducing this canopy back now that I can see more. So these trees are edible. They're called the elephant bush. Elephants love stripping the leaves off and eating them. So in nature, these get pruned by elephants. So they're used to kind of getting hard pruned and then coming back to life. That's why they're good for bonsai. Okay, so I've kind of got, well, I can take a few more shoots off here. But I think I've got the main tree kind of pruned back in size, roughly. So now I can go in and do some branch selection. Okay, so I'm looking from the front. Now, these two branches kind of come up parallel. I don't really like that. They're kind of like, instead of splaying out, they're very vertical with each other. And they're getting quite thick without taper. Now, one of the characteristics of a baobab is that the branches start out very thick and they taper quickly. That, you know, they're almost triangular shaped, the branches, that they start out thick, taper very quickly, and they're, you know, compact. Very, a very specific look that no other tree has, or very few. So, I would like this trunk line, I would like it coming forward and flatter. So I can see there's a division here, one of the rings, and that's where a leaf would typically come out of. So I'm going to prune it just above there. So this is a fairly big cut. So I prune about halfway between the two rings. So here I go, like that, taking that off. And I'm hoping I get something coming out the front here. That would be ideal. Now the other one, the other fairly vertical one, again, it's getting quite tall. I want to keep the branches kind of flat. So I do have a horizontal branch in here, but it's not coming out the front, which is too bad. So I think, again, I'm going to have to try and do a fairly hard prune. And where is the question? I can't have it growing vertical like this. It's just too tall. And, you know, it doesn't taper from here all the way kind of up to here. So I need that dramatic taper. So I am going to, tough. I have a ring here where this branch comes off. I could prune it halfway through here, just like the other side, and see what happens here. Or I could prune it one ring higher, maybe. Is that getting that's getting too high? Or I could prune it one ring lower, even something come out here. That might be the best thing to do, especially because these two trunks kind of converge a bit here. So if I could get something coming out the front, down low here, like just like this branch, except off of here, it would be magical. So I'm going to go right here, hard prune. Here I go. Boy, oh boy. So I think, I'm wondering if this one's still too high. I think it is. I think I've got to go back to here, like that. Avoiding, you know, vertical straight sections. So I think that has a lot fixed here on this main trunk line. The one that's coming out here, again, it's getting quite tall. It doesn't taper from here all the way up to like almost right up here. So it needs some cutting too. And where is the question? And again, you know, I don't want these two trunks converging here. I want everything fanning out and fairly flat. So I think a hard prune is in order for this one also. And I'm wondering, how low do I go? Do I want to prune way back to here to get something sprouting out of here? That would solve my interference problem, and I think that would be best. So here I go. Hard prune. Great cuttings, by the way. I'll bring these to the KW meeting too to give away. So there you go. Now you can see this trunk line behind, which is getting quite thick. This branch always had good taper from thick here to kind of thin here. I lost, this one didn't sprout from this area, which is too bad. I'm just going to see, it's still green there. I'm going to recut that, see what happens there. And then I'm going to, the branch kind of comes up and goes to the back, which isn't so good. I'd rather something kind of coming out radially. So that will need some fixing. I don't want this one coming to the inside here, so I'm going to take that off like that. The KW meeting is tomorrow night, by the way. So I'm still working on this branch here. Let's get a close-up of it. Here's a close-up so you can see that it comes up and there's nothing coming out the front. It all goes to the back. So I do have kind of a branch to the side here, which I will keep. And I'm going to prune it off here, like that. And then this whole back one I'm going to prune off. So here I go. I don't want it growing out the back like that. So you can see that opens this up. And there's another little one coming out the back. I'll get rid of that too. So all my growth will come out more to the side, and hopefully I'll get something coming out the front here. Eventually I will, if I just keep trying. Okay, I think next I've got this branch coming up the middle here. I don't mind something coming up the middle. I think that'll be nice in the future. But I don't want it this long and straight with no taper. So I think I'm going to prune it off low here, like that. And try and grow something off here and back. Kind of snake its way up here eventually. I've got a branch growing back into the tree here. I'm going to take that right out, like that. Now, I've got some branches here. Let me see. I don't think I want this one growing across the middle here, so I'm going to get rid of that. And this one at the back here, well, I guess it's okay. It's getting tall. That's the trouble. I'm going to reduce it right back to here. Shortening that. Again, you know, keeping everything compact, with lots of taper. Now this branch here, let's have a look at it. I've already cut this branch. It was getting too long in this section here, and so I cut it back hard here. I missed it on camera. So that should sprout new shoots in this area and be much more compact with more taper and movement. So I think that's looking good. I'm back to the front view now, so I'm just having a look at it. Boy, I'm not real keen on this one kind of going in towards the center. It doesn't fan out, so I'm going to get rid of it. And that may stimulate more branches coming out here. This is a stump here. I'm just going to see if it's fleshy still. Yes, it is. So I'm going to recut it. See if that stimulates something in this area. Got a branch out the back here that needs pruning shorter. Okay, I'm looking from the front again. You can see this is a nice height once branches start going in. This is quite thick. It's getting quite tall. I hard pruned that once and it's recovered. I definitely am going to prune the top off for starters. I don't mind the one growing here. I'll just take that back to there. The one growing towards the inside here, I don't think I need that one. I'm taking that out. It'll give more light down to these branches, which will grow up and replace those ones pointing inwards towards the center of the tree. I got one here too that's growing in towards the center of the tree. I'll take that out. So this branch is kind of fanning out towards the back. This can be shortened here. This can be shortened. I don't want this little branch down at the bottom here. I don't have any use for that, so that's coming off like that. I'm looking kind of down at the top of this tree. I'm getting quite long at the back, and this trunk line is quite thick, but it has no taper. You can see it's the same thickness from here all the way up to here. So I think that has to be hard pruned back. It's getting quite tall too, so I've got to reduce the height of it. So here I go. I'm going to come in here and do a big chop right to here. Wow, big cut coming up. Just like that. Wow, it's a big cut. I've got, off of here, I've got this trunk which was hard pruned here. It sprouted out new branches. They're looking pretty good. Just going to prune this one back. They're not too bad. They are getting a little long, but not ridiculous. The one coming up here is getting quite long. I'm going to take it off like that, and maybe I don't like the one growing towards the inside here. That can come off. And maybe it is getting long in this area here. I'm going to take it back to here, see what happens. There's a branch growing out the back here. I'll trim back like that. So that's got this area compact and kind of to a good height, which is important. Now, the other part, I was talking about this vertical part here. It goes from thick to thin, which is good. It's not too high, so I think this is all okay, this apex. But back here, I've got to shorten this branch to here. And there's a lot of branches growing in towards the center that I have to remove. I want them fanning out. So I'm going to take off this whole branch structure here, like that. Keeping the one fanning out, and then I'll reduce this back. And I'm going to go right back to here. Bit of a chop there. Wow, that is reduction. So basically what I did over the summer is I grew my trunk. You know, I let all these shoots grow. I've hard pruned it back so I'll get more finer shoots. And I always kind of keep the branches that are going in a good direction. I try and, you know, I've got a lot that I think will grow out the front now. So yeah, I just keep repeating the process, and slowly over the years this trunk will get older and older and thicker, and it should slowly look more and more like a baobab tree. I'm having a look at it from the front now. So this trunk is definitely, you know, a little higher than all the rest and quite thick. I could see it becoming a problem in the future. You know, unless I let the others catch up. You know, this one probably will thicken up quite quickly. It's a good flow line going up. It'll get lots of sap going to it. You know, I would hate to hard prune this trunk back. Maybe someday I will, and this branch here is so old looking and has great taper, thick to thin right out here. I'd hate to get rid of it. And same with this one, very thick to thin very quickly, which is, you know, very baobabish. Yeah, I think looking at it, I really like this branch as a trunk line here, and I don't really want this one. I don't mind this one, but I think that one could be taken off and this could be grown as my trunk line. So I'm going to do that. I think that'll solve my problem here with my devil horns sticking up there. Like that, yeah. Yeah, that'll be much nicer. Okay, so other than kind of scarring the main tree up again, I think the pruning is done. I mean, can't really take much more off than that, can I? So a little more scarring, just to create more scar tissue here. scarring in between my older scars. Tearing out chunks, making it look very old. So I want to get rid of that kind of striped effect. I want it to look like, you know, bumpy scars. And so I'm kind of taking out some chunks in between, which I think will look good. It should really roughen this trunk texture up. Again, bit of an experiment, but you know, that's what bonsai is all about. If you have a desired look in your mind, then you know you've got to find a technique that kind of gets you that look that you want. So I'm removing a lot of chunks. There's a good chunk removed there. So I'm hoping, you know, I end up with a really bumpy, gnarly looking trunk on this tree. And then, you know, over time it'll smooth out and it should hopefully look more like the bark of a baobab. Because, you know, without doing this, they always kind of look like a Portulacaria afra or a mini jade. This should help give it a different look, because this isn't, you know, this is a tree that's meant to look like something else. It's not meant to look like a Portulacaria afra. And I'll keep the tree fairly dry after all this work because, you know, I've cut off almost all the leaves, so there's not much to soak up. You know, the roots aren't going to be taking the water out of the soil much because there's nothing to feed. So I'll keep it fairly dry till it starts growing and recovering, and then slowly increase the water. I do that with all my succulents. I'm very cautious about overwatering them. I keep them out of the rain, and you know, maybe the development isn't quite as quick as if you were, you know, a little more taking risks, watering them more, fertilizing them more, but it keeps them alive. I'd rather a plant that stays alive than one that I tried to accelerate the growth by watering it too soon. So there's lots of scarring on that trunk now. Maybe still a little too stripy looking here. Take out a few more of these plates. Yeah, that's looking pretty cool. And again, not real. So far, this technique has worked really well. I'm happy with it, but you know, there's no guarantees. It's an experiment. Okay, I like that. I think that's looking pretty cool. I think it's time to finish up the forest. So I'm not going to show you all the other trees because it's going to be exactly the same decisions, the same process. They're just smaller trees, less branches. So here I go. This tree, I did a trunk chop on it and it wasn't successful. I'll show you a close-up of that. Here's a tree here that it had a Y shape and I cut the one leg off here and nothing ever grew out of this side. So that wasn't successful, that trunk chop, and sometimes they aren't. So results are not always guaranteed, especially in bonsai. I've got a shoot coming out of the trunk here. I don't want one that low, so I'm going to prune those off. And then I'm going to scar this. I'm just going to see if it's still alive. Yes, it is. It's green. So I'll scar it and maybe it'll activate some branches to grow in this area. So I'm just kind of scarring it up. And usually that does. It activates something to grow. I have finished the pruning on my Portulacaria afra forest quite a severe pruning once again, but I think, you know, slowly, if I keep doing this over the years, I think I'm going to get really, really old super miniature trees in the future. That's my goal anyway. So let's go have a look at the trees now. When I started doing the scarring on the trunks, I wasn't sure of the results. It was an experiment, but so far I'm really liking it. I've been doing it, I think, for 3 years now, scarring up those trunks. They heal over and it gets a really nice, interesting texture on the trunk, rather than just kind of like a typical jade with those segments. I think it gives more of a tree-like appearance, which is what I'm after with this. I'm standing back, having a look at the forest now. I think my tree on the end is a little high, but I could reduce that back a little more. I think the other trees are looking good though. I think they're not a bad height. The one tree back here, right here, not that one, the one tucked in behind here, it needs a little more carving on the trunks. I'll show you a close-up of that. Here's a look at the trunk on the main tree. You can see it looks very old. But the one back here is looking, you can see all the segments on it. So I think I better do a little more carving on that one. And there may be a few others that I'll touch up. I'll do a bit of carving with the pruners, kind of roughing that trunk up. I don't know how it happened, but my afternoon turned into the evening. The sun will be setting soon. So that is it. I've finished scarring up all the trunks on the trees, pruning them. I've reduced the height of this one a bit. So you can see they're all kind of scarred up. Very, very interesting. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see, you know, how they heal in the far future, if they just kind of go smooth or if they kind of stay rough looking. I have a feeling they'll kind of go smooth, but they'll lose that kind of segmented ring look to them. I think they'll look more like the old trunk of a Baobab. That's what I'm hoping anyway. So I'll put this back in the plant room and let it grow. It's time now for today's update. My Portulacaria afra forest is quite small. You know, they're old trees. They're getting thick, but they're not very high. Today's update is even smaller. So this is a little jade that I planted in a pot made by Isabella. And I think it's a really nice combination. I've got it sitting on a block of marble there. But there's a look at the tree. Now how large is it? Well, here's my finger. You know, it's very tiny. It's how many fingers high? I guess about 4 fingers high. I'm thinking of reducing it. It's getting kind of long. So I'm going to take the top off it today. I guess I'm in the mood today for doing some quite severe pruning. So I pruned my little jade back. I pruned that long branch off, the leader off the top. There's a long back branch. So I've got it a lot more compact now. It's kind of 2 fingers high now. So these little tiny bonsai, a normal tree like an elm or something, or a maple, would be very difficult to keep alive in a small pot like this. But these succulents are perfect. You can let them dry out a little more. They're more forgiving. They're excellent as small bonsai, I find. This one is just growing in pure sand, and it seems to do really well. Even though it's Wednesday today, not Succulent Sunday, I did a lot of work on my succulent bonsai. That is all for today. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone.